Hi there, I'm Katy-Rose. Today I want to talk a little bit about living in alignment. And I've specifically used that phrase because I couldn't find another phrase that was accurate for what I feel like I want to talk about. I think particularly in the self-help space, also apologies. If you can hear any rustling, that is hawthorn. I stand corrected, that is bramble. Bramble is pulling apart a hut made of seagrass? Something he's allowed to eat, it's fine. I feel like one of the most talked about aspects in self-development, in life coaching, even in sort of cognitive behavioural therapy and some of the stuff that I'm trained in, there is a huge focus on like living in alignment with our values, or living in alignment with living in integrity, living a good life, an intentional life, thinking about the minimalist movement. There's a lot about living with only what we need. And I suppose there are so many different facets to this that it can be really hard on a practical level to then know what to do with that. So, you know, I've looked through all the which values do you put above others? Is honour more important to you than integrity? Is adventure more important to you than curiosity? And all of these kind of values words get thrown around. And that can be really helpful. I've definitely found those exercises useful at times. And one of the other things that I see on kind of the other end of the spectrum is that kind of natural cycle living. I know I spoke in my last video about kind of living within the seasons and how us human beings are animals, and how seasonal living suggests that in the winter we are hibernating, we are calm, we are quiet, we are under the soil, we are resting. And then in spring, that's when the growth happens, that's when new things spawn. And actually how our traditional modern New Year's Day is in the dead of winter, for lack of another word. Like, it is really in that deep part of winter. And it is only sort of the second half of February moving into March, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, where I feel like spring really comes around and where I start to feel my energy go again, start to feel that pull. Start to come back to YouTube, for example. But it is very tricky to do that when it is still cold and dark. And for me, I feel like my body is telling me, my brain is telling me that this is a time for rest. But whenever I look at things like seasonal living, there's a lot of focus on which plants and which fruits and vegetables are around at your time of year for your country. And that's a really practical way of doing it if you have access to and like different fruits and vegetables and have the money to access those sorts of things. Whereas I can tell you the supermarkets here just import them from other places, and even things that I would think in autumn, we have apples in England, some of those apples in the supermarket in autumn going into winter are still imported. I'm seeing a lot more talk about kind of cyclic living, so particularly for those with wombs, to kind of think about that cycle that we have on a monthly basis. But again, that feels like, oh, in this week it should be this, and you should eat this food, and you should do this exercise. And I'm just seeing a lot that's very one size fits all. I've noticed that when I step back and I look at the science, look at the spirit, look at the self, look at those kind of facets I often integrate, how kind of seasonal living doesn't have to be a prescribed, it's day X of a X day cycle, or it is December, therefore it is winter, particularly with climate change being how it has been. I feel like living in alignment with my human nature is something that's a little bit trickier than just thinking it's December, it's winter, I should. It's week 3 of a period cycle, I should, therefore my body should feel like, and so on and so forth. And I think particularly with the kind of habits that we have, the way that our modern life exists, the idea of a 9 to 5, the idea of what's an appropriate bedtime for someone in their mid-30s, what you're meant to do on a Friday night at certain points in your life, is all really tricky to figure out as a one-size-fits-all approach. And particularly when you throw in any kind of health conditions. I have both physical and mental health difficulties that come up and flare up and calm down as life goes on. And sometimes those can be completely unpredictable, and sometimes those I can kind of see them coming. And again, that in itself is a bit of a cycle, and I know where some of those warning signs come up, and sometimes there aren't any warning signs. And that's just the reality of life. So I think one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is almost that permission to pause. We're in winter. It's coming up to the end of February here. We're still in that kind of winterish phase. We're still in that planning our spring from the Northern Hemisphere. And actually, I don't need to have another app that tells me where I am in the monthly cycle. I don't need to look up exactly when sunrise is and sunset is to work out what I should be doing with my life. But there is something about, what is my body telling me? What is my mind telling me? What is my brain creating for me? What thoughts am I shaping my day with? And I think sometimes feeling that we can take a little bit of control back. I do have a 9-to-5 job, but actually a couple of days a week I can work from home for that last bit of the day. And that means that I can plan, those are the days where I'm going to make a slightly more nutritious meal, and I'm just going to make a lot of it. I can kind of book, if I know that I'm having a day where I'm starting to kind of see a little bit of a health issue coming up, I can put things in place around that. I can contact my support network, ask them to help me. If I notice that the temperatures are starting to drop again, I will look online and kind of see what the weather suggests it might do. I mean, weather forecasts aren't particularly accurate very often, but, kind of thinking, actually, if it's going to be like this, what do I need to prepare? What do I need to have handy? Do I need to have my electric hand warmers already, charged? Do I need to make sure I've got my braces handy for my wrists for when things flare up? What support do I need in this day, in this moment, in the next hour? So as much as I love the idea of living within seasons, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos where it is panoramas of beautiful forest shots and feeling really connected with nature, and there are definitely things that I do. I've got a cup of nettle tea, which is one of my decaffeinated teas that I have in the evening, that help me feel a little bit more kind of grounded and connected to myself. It is something that gives me a sense of comfort. It reminds me a little bit of those pagan roots that I have. Sometimes we can spend so much energy and time and effort looking for information. And I'm guilty of this. I am a curious seeker of knowledge. I'm always looking to understand things better, to learn how things work, to make sense of the world around me. And actually, sometimes the knowledge that I need is here. And I find that really annoying sometimes. I'd really like to be able to read a book and find the answer. Actually, sometimes what I need to do is recognise I've woken up in pain from my health condition. I need to take my painkillers. I need to make sure that I've got my heavy duty painkillers available. I'm prescribed painkillers daily, and I have conversations with a doctor about that every few months to see what I can and can't have and what is helpful to take when I'm having a flare up versus on a perhaps a more stable day. And knowing how you work in your life is something that I think a lot of us don't always know how to understand and to see and recognise, or don't know where to start with. And it can be the bit that's missing when we're looking at some of the advice that might be around. I don't have the same job hours that you do. My body doesn't need the same amount of sleep that yours might do. You may not have the same animals to care for as I do, and the same things that you need to do every morning before you leave. Your body may have different nutritional needs to mine. You know, it's all very well. It's nice to have that starting point of, I would like to live more in tune with my natural cycles and natural seasons and the way that nature kind of, you know, the way that humans are wired to exist. Equally, we live in the 21st century. We live in an age of technology. We live in an age of artificial light that changes what our body thinks it should be doing at any one time of day. I have a lamp over there that is specifically has 10,000 lumens to look like the sun. I take vitamin D every day because I live in the UK. There are a lot of things that, you know, seasonally or natural living would recommend, and I don't think any of them are harmful to do. But I also know I won't get out of bed and go for a 10-minute walk every morning. That is not something I can commit to. It's not something my body will necessarily be able to do. It is not something that the British weather will grant me sunlight to do. It is not something that my level of sleep will allow me to do regularly, to get up at a certain time, that make sure I have the time to do it. So what can I do? I can listen to my body. I can look for the patterns within my own life. I understand that in week 1 of the menstrual cycle, you're meant to do this, and it's recommended that your body can take this, and you can try this type of exercise, and this type of food will be the best kind, and that's the time when you socialise more or less. But I can know what I am capable of doing this Saturday and Sunday because I know how busy this week is for me. I know that I've just had a social week with half term. So I guess this was a very long-winded way of saying it's okay to find what works for you, to listen to your body and yourself. I very much value, looking at plans and goals for what I'd like to do with my life, thinking about where I want to go in the future and who I want to be, and would love to feel more in tune with the seasons. But actually today, I need my cup of nettle tea, and I'm going to do a little bit of meditation tonight, if I have time, if I'm in the headspace for it. And then I'm going to prepare for what I'll need tomorrow, because it's been 10 degrees C here today. I will my gloves today to work. I'm going to be out and about tomorrow. I will probably need my gloves. I'm going to take healthy food for lunch. Sometimes we can really overcomplicate things because we've been told to. Capitalism and the world that we live in, the modern day, says the reason you're not happy is because you don't have this. The reason that you are not you can't be successful unless you have that. You want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like you have something worthy to give to friends and family. You want to feel like you are living a life that's worth it. You have to do this. You should be doing this. How much time are you wasting? How much energy are you spending? When did you last go to the gym? We live in a society, certainly in the Western world, that tells us how lacking we are, and then tells us what to buy to make ourselves feel like we are not lacking. And I can tell you that the thing that really we lack is connection with ourselves, with each other. We're a tribal species, we're a social species. Loneliness is one of the biggest killers of human beings in the whole world, because we need each other. We crave social connection. We do not do well in isolation. It drives us crazy. And that idea of connecting with ourself is one that I have definitely had to take the last year or two to really embody. Like, I understood it theoretically. You know, I have a master's in neuroscience, I have a bachelor's in psychology, I have over a decade of experience working with people in support services and in health and education services. But that idea of knowing ourselves or connecting with ourselves, that isn't just, oh, well, I journal and get all these thoughts out my head. Those thoughts aren't me. Oh, well, I like doing this sport and that makes me feel enjoyment, so I'll do that more. Yeah, that helps. But what is your body telling you? What signs are you ignoring in your mind? Where could you just bring a little bit of connection back to you? Is that something you used to love doing as a kid? Is that a value that you really value, for lack of a better word? Is it a value that's very important to you that you actually want to make sure you bring back? Since December, I've started being a little bit more vocal about the idea of kind of capitalism and our modern way of life, and how the media and how governments are essentially brainwashing us into being disconnected from ourselves. And that feels a little bit conspiracy theory-esque. However, my degree knowledge also backs all of that up. And there are a lot of psychology studies that back all of that up. And the concept is sound. I'm not here to be spreading any particular theories left, right and centre of any particular things. But I've started to be more vocal about that because that's my truth. That's what I see. Those are the connections I'm making. And I want to help make sure that we are in control of our lives. You know, my role is to promote empowerment. That's what I've always done in any of my roles. Even when I was writing fiction, it's all about human resilience and our ability to, you know, we're more capable than we realise. If we knew what advertisers knew about how our brains work, it would just level the playing field out. And I think that's a worthy cause. So perhaps there's a value like that that you're not speaking up about, that you're not thinking about, that you're not letting yourself research, that perhaps would just spark that little bit of connection to yourself again. So I would love to hear in the comments if you have any particular values or ways of connecting with yourself, ways of living in alignment that work for you. We're not here necessarily to tell other people how to live their lives, or we're not here to tell other people how to live their lives, but what works for you, because those ideas spark further ideas. And even when we teach problem solving as a technique in cognitive behavioural therapy, there is no such thing as a bad idea, because the ideas that are kind of silly or really out there or not particularly well thought out, they become springboards for sometimes the best ideas that we'd never have got to without them. So I would love to hear in the comments your thoughts, your ideas, what works for you, what's worked for people you know. And I suppose if you have any further questions about this process, I would love to kind of explore it a bit more, perhaps a bit more specifically, down a couple of routes. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like. Subscribe so that you don't miss future videos like this one. And I look forward to reading your comments below. Bye.